creativity and innovation isn't the exclusive preserve of the executive leadership team. In fact, I rather suspect that creativity and innovation is ready and waiting deep in this organization to be unlocked.
There are two types of people out there: people with imposter syndrome and liars. Seriously, everybody has imposter syndrome, everybody. And we always think that we're going to get rid of it whenever we climb the ladder or get to the next level. But really, does it ever go away? Well, I have Evelyn Webster, the CEO of SoulCycle, here with me today to talk to you all about imposter syndrome and being a boss lady in what would typically be called a man's world. So Evelyn, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to have the opportunity to join you and have this chat today.
I know. We've been talking about it for a little while. When I saw you in Houston, was that the fall?
Yeah, well, it was before I had ACL surgery, wasn't it? So I think it was in November.
Oh, yes. We will get to your ACL surgery. We definitely will, for sure. You were doing this tour of SoulCycle, right? Yeah, tour in Texas, everywhere.
I was doing my Texas tour. Yeah, It was great. It was my last trip before I had to stop traveling for a few weeks.
Got it. Before you had to lay low for the surgery, which
that's it.
We'll get to that. But just thank you so much for being here. SoulCycle has been a big part of my life. I've been teaching for 4 years with the company. And so give us a little bit of background on your journey. When did you start with Soul? What was the life like before Soul?
So Soul has been a big part of my life for probably 7-8 years. So for many years before I joined SoulCycle, I worked in media. In fact, I worked in media for over 30 years. And SoulCycle was my sanctuary, my escape, the thing that I did to get away from the stresses of the work day.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I thought, you know what? Well, I'll tell you exactly what happened. I hit 50 and I thought I have long believed that I am a great general manager and I could apply my skills to another industry, another vertical, another company. And I had dinner with a friend one night and I said, I'm thinking about what my next gig might be. He said, what gives you joy? And what gives me joy was SoulCycle. And so I just happened to then read an article that said SoulCycle was in need of a new chief executive. And 2 and a bit years ago, I left media and joined SoulCycle, which it has been both thrilling to pursue the thing that gives you joy.
Yeah.
Frustrating because we're an experience business, right? And so to join an experience business that's very much built on community when you actually can't be with your community has had some challenges, to say the least. But it's been an incredible time and an incredible journey. And I was right. My assertion years ago when I hit 50 that, you know what, I think I could probably transfer my skills to a different business, a different brand, a different industry. I was right.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'd love to hear more about the switch from media to boutique fitness. So if you're not familiar with SoulCycle, it is one of the biggest indoor cycling fitness boutiques, and in my personal opinion, the best companies out there. And I mean, it's huge. We're global, right? That we've got studios in London.
That's right. We're in the UK and we're in the States, with obviously aspirations to go further afield.
Yeah. And I'm super excited to be a part of the team for that too. That would be so awesome to see the company just expand. How did you get from media to taking something that you love? Because there's so many people out there. That's actually something I hear a lot in coaching is, how do I do more with what I love and make it my job? So how did you make that jump?
Yeah, do you know, it's so funny. So I do a lot of mentoring, and I'm a firm believer in paying it forward. So I mentor a lot of executives, largely female, but men and women, and they're often very intrigued with how I made the jump from one thing that might appear to be very different to the thing that I do today. And I say 2 things. One, I'm a CEO, right? What does it mean? It means I'm a general manager, which means I believe in brands and particularly consumer-facing brands. And I believe in our potential with strong brand to do lots of things with it, i.e. to grow, whether that's to go international, or for us at SoulCycle, it might be, let's get off the bike. Let's lean into the soul of SoulCycle. Let's earn a slice of our riders' day every day. Let's take the soul proposition to a broader community internationally. So my ability as a general manager to identify great brands with huge potential because of the connection that they have with their consumer isn't limited to any one brand that I may work on. Yeah. So I used to work on InStyle or Fortune or Time magazine or Real Simple or celebrity magazines, sports magazines. I used to be Sports Illustrated when I was over at Time Inc. My job there was taking these incredible brands that had a unparalleled connection with their consumers, and I sought ways to unlock and unleash the power of those consumer connections with these incredible, iconic brands. When you think about what I envision for SoulCycle, it's precisely the same. We've got this extraordinary brand with an unparalleled connection to its consumer, with the potential to be way more than we are today. And so for me, the journey, the mental journey of saying, I'm a good GM, I just used to work on this brand, and now I've got this real passion and commitment to this other brand, albeit in a different industry, the discipline and the principles are exactly the same as a business leader. So I always say, oh, no, my skills are very transferable. You just need to clearly articulate, well, what are the skills that you're seeking to transfer to another industry? The second thing that I always say to people when I talk to them is, don't box yourself in. Other people, and plenty of them, will try their very hardest to box you in. So that the last thing you want to do is box yourself in.
Yeah.
And so when other people say you're not qualified, you don't have the experience, yada, yada, call BS. Like that's not true. That's only true because you've said so from your perspective. And that's not accurate. So I always say challenge that assertion.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. That's good. Because I think that also plays a part in imposter syndrome, right? If let's say I hear a lot of times people are stuck in jobs that they don't like, but seeing what they want seems so far away because they haven't made that connection, right?
That's right.
Well, these transferable skills. What do you actually like doing? What are you good at? What work doesn't feel like work? What would you do? Even if the pay wasn't there, whatever. What are you naturally good at? What lights you up? So that's awesome. Right. So what was it about SoulCycle that you loved? Because I know you were a rider.
Yeah, I was a big rider. I was a rider. And it's interesting, I've often said that SoulCycle, one of our superpowers is our community, but you might detect that I'm British. British people are not the friendliest people in the world. But I felt a very powerful connection to this community, even though I wasn't an active participant in it. Many of our riders will say, I met my partner at Soul. I've met my best friend. SoulCycle's got me through the hardest times of my life. It's got me through the most joyful times in my life. I was never active in as much as all of my friends were not SoulCycle riders, but I felt connected to something bigger than me. And that was extraordinarily powerful.
Yeah.
I'm really into fitness, and guess what? SoulCycle is a pretty phenomenal workout. I used to be a marathon runner. I don't run marathons anymore, but I discovered, SoulCycle, and it's just phenomenal fun, a great workout. And this sense of being connected to something was very powerful. And for me, in my personal experience, perhaps being a transplant to America, it kind of gave me a ready-made group of like-minded individuals. And that was the strength of the community that I felt connected to. So I was a big SoulCycler, and I loved it then as much as I love it now, even though we've been through these quite turbulent times with this thing called the pandemic. But thankfully.
And you came in right in the middle, right?
Yeah. I was clearly mad as a box of frogs. Like I love a challenge. I was ready for a change. I'd hit 50, right? And I thought, okay, it's time for me to do something else. But yeah, I joined in December of 2020 at what I thought at the time was the end of the pandemic.
Right.
Really, what you and I have since discovered is we were still pretty much at the beginning of the pandemic. Right. Point.
Oh my gosh. I know. I remember it was the summer of 2020, and in Texas, we were closed down for a couple months, and we're starting to go back. But I want to say it was May and I was ordering a mask online. Like I succumbed to the fabric masks, and it was not going to get here until August. So maybe call it Texas naivety, but I was like, August? Oh, I won't need this by then. Fast forward a couple of years. So you come in with this plan, and I will interject and say, Evelyn is an Enneagram 8. I was sensing original Enneagram 1 energy, which 8s and 1s are very similar with this impact, right? You come in, you're like, I want to create change. I see the potential. I want to maximize what I can do here. I want to be influential here. Use my superpowers matched with SoulCycle superpowers, and we can create something just so beautiful.
That's right.
And
that's right.
I've loved working with you. I think you're doing a great job, just to interject my personal opinion. But
thank you. That means a lot.
Good. So when you get there, right, how quickly did it take you, to realize, oh, this pandemic isn't going anywhere? Because I know New York too was very different than Texas. We'll say that, but
yeah, well, quite quickly. I mean, probably 6 months, which I know sounds like a ridiculously long time, but I remember having my very first board meeting in about the February. So I started in December. I think in February, I had my first board meeting at which I presented a whole strategic plan for growth. Like, these are the pillars for growth. We've got to double down on our instructors. These incredibly talented rock stars who make people feel things. Really, I mean, feelings are powerful things for when it comes to managing brands. So it's like, how are we going to harness the power of that feeling in the room, coupled with this tremendous hospitality upon which SoulCycle has built its reputation. Oh, we're going to get off the bike. We're going to do this on the bike. We're going to expand internationally. We're going to open all these studios. Then we're going to get off the bike. We're going to lean into the soul of SoulCycle. Oh, I was very excited. So that was in February. So I'd been here for like 2.5 months. And by the next board meeting, 3 months later, I was like going, oh, hang on. This thing is not going away. We were opening and closing studios. We were outside, we were inside, we were moving from rooftops to car parking garages. We were having distance, not in every territory, of course. In some territories, it was as if there weren't a pandemic at all. But in other territories, we were like 6 feet of distance, with a mask, without a mask.
Right. And then things kept changing too. It was all this change.
All the time. And what's really interesting, I mean, I remember doing all hands at SoulCycle, within my first 6 months. And look, I've been a CEO for a really long time, right? And one of the things that I perhaps had grown accustomed to is I've always got a relatively good idea of both the direction of travel and the time it's going to take to get there, and how you galvanize teams and to make it happen. And I went from being uber confident, like, over the next 3 months, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to open all of our studios, and there will be no social distancing, and we will all be riding without masks, to much more of a, I hope that this is the end. I hope that we can see blue sky on the horizon. Mm-hmm. We're coming out of this, we're emerging. And then, of course, we kept on getting hit by more variants. So it was a humbling experience for me to go through as a CEO after, hopefully managing businesses with quite a lot of certainty over the last 20 years of my life, to actually not knowing all the answers and having to feel my way through it, whilst at the same time leading, over 1,000 teammates who were looking for answers, looking for certainty, at a time in my life that I had never experienced before, where I could not give certainty. Mm-hmm. And so I learned a lot about myself. I think as colleagues, we learned a lot about each other during that period.
Yeah. What did you learn about yourself? What are some highlights of I remember that lesson or memory? That one sticks out.
So I learned the power of saying, I don't know.
Okay. That's a good one, because that's a hard one.
Yeah, it really is hard, but particularly when you think I ought to know. Going back to this point about imposter syndrome or self-doubt, of course, everybody has doubts at points in their life, their career. And that's why I laugh and say everybody feels that way at some point.
Yeah.
You rather hope with experience that those moments of self-doubt diminish. And of course, what happened, perhaps I was arrogant. Perhaps I thought I ought to have the answers because I'm the CEO. Surely, to goodness, the CEO should have all answers to all questions.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very naive and a little bit arrogant because, of course, how on earth could I possibly have all the answers? And so the biggest discovery was, one, oh shit, I don't have all the answers. And two, do you know what? My colleagues, our community, our soul community, were very supportive and forgiving. It's like, okay, but we're going to figure this out together,
mm-hmm.
and we're going to make the right decisions together. And okay, maybe if we make a decision and we ultimately find it wasn't quite the right decision, we'll figure it out together. And so it was a somewhat difficult lesson to learn at the time, but actually I feel as if I learned a lot from that, and I will be forever grateful for
mm-hmm.
those lessons.
Yeah, the I don't know. I think whether, you're a leader somewhere or trying to make a change, right? Or navigating a pandemic that has never happened before. It's like the world doesn't know the answers, but I still feel like I should have the answers for this.
That's right. It's my job. I have to say one thing that has often struck me over the years of my career is I feel I'm here to serve, right? I'm here to serve my colleagues at SoulCycle. I'm here to serve the brand. I'm here to serve our investors. I'm here to serve my teammates, my colleagues. And I take that responsibility very, very, very seriously. Some might argue too seriously, too personally sometimes. And so it means that I care deeply about the impact that not only I am having on the organization and on the brand, on the people, but also, of course, I care deeply about the impact that Soul has on our community and on the world at large.
Right.
So I take that responsibility very seriously. And that's something that I sometimes have to look in the mirror and go, you don't have all the answers, get over yourself, but we'll figure this out. Because we will.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we do isn't life or death. What we do is we have tremendous impact by touching hearts and minds. And that's really important. And we take it very seriously, but we should never take ourselves too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's always important to remember. I can say that with a very rational yes, when I'm being very mindful head. I can say that. I often forget in the heat of the moment.
Yeah. Sometimes when shit hits the fan, it's like, oh my gosh, everything's a 10,
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Just getting caught up in the sauce sometimes, of things just have to move very quickly and I have to know all of the answers. But what happens if I don't know? It's like, I don't even take the time to say it to myself. Hey, it's okay if you don't know. You have to take that moment for yourself, like your little pep talk in the mirror. You're like, okay, I got to talk myself up,
That's right.
Spend time with yourself, right? That's another, I think, component of SoulCycle that you can get, anywhere. But that's what makes SoulCycle so special because it encourages you, even though you're in a room full of 60, 70 people, all doing the same thing, you're right next to somebody, but it's just inspires this introspective moment of self, right? And I think that's what really impacts people. And
that's right.
They can walk away from it, man, like, I don't know what that was, but it felt so good. It's like yourself.
We walk out, exactly. I remember, and it still happens to me now, I walk out the studio and I feel this, strength. Just this strength to take on the world. I will tell you something else, which is, it's a wonderful part of SoulCycle, but it also happens outside of SoulCycle, which is when you take a moment to reflect, whether you're looking at yourself in the mirror, giving yourself a bit of a talking to, going, come on, we can do this. I will tell you the vast majority of times you will find the answer. It's perspective. It's the, not saying the wood for the trees. It's like everything that's going on, the tension that you feel when you are under pressure or in a moment of stress. Sometimes the answer is right there in front of you. You just need to give yourself perspective. And so sometimes when I use this phrase, I look in the mirror and kind of give myself talking to, I might be giving myself a talking to. I might also just be taking a breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Taking a moment to reflect. And once you've taken that moment, your common sense kicks in and answers start to present themselves.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. That space you create for yourself. I guess kind of the theme I'm hearing is like coming back to self, because your mind is not self, but you can get kind of stuck in there, and then it goes all these different ways, like, oh my God, this. And then you overthink all these different aspects, and you imagine all these different scenarios and all these different opinions and thoughts.
That's right.
And half the time they're not even real, and that fuels that self-doubt, because all these potential things that could happen.
That's right.
Versus coming back to yourself, pausing. I love that you said pause, take a moment. What is my perspective of myself right now? What do I know about myself to be true? So when the pandemic didn't end, right, for a while, what did you know about yourself to be true in that moment?
Oh, I'm very resilient, an eternal optimist. So even though every twist and turn, it became apparent that the pandemic was not behind us, I was optimistic about the potential. Mm-hmm. So, okay, we can, even though we've got 6 feet of distancing, we can still open and operate our studios. We can still bring our community together. We can open more studios outside. Yes, it's not ideal that we're in a garage, but isn't it better that we're together rather than being isolated in our own homes, from the comfort of our own homes, rather than on a rooftop in a car parking garage or something? So I'm resilient. I've always suspected. So look, I worked in media for a long time. This is an industry that's been disrupted for probably the last 25 years. So I think I brought that skill of resilience with me. Mm-hmm. But there's also real strength to being new in a company or in an industry, in as much as there are no sacred aspects of what you do or how you operate that you are wedded to, because I had no history. And so, of course, what I learned in the moment was I could question and challenge absolutely everything that we do, the way that we do it, or how do we do it that way. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that yielded surprising opportunities that we were able to pursue. So
it's like that fresh perspective.
Yeah.
So when if you're new at something, even though really you're taking your transferable skills, putting them into something that you love right here. Mm-hmm. But you're new to boutique fitness. And if somebody else is new to something, use it for your advantage. Because again, it's really just about that perspective of, I'm new. And you can let that fuel your imposter syndrome and self-doubt. Like, oh, I'm new to the block. Everybody else has been in this industry or at this table for X amount of months, years, whatever, has this much experience. But when you dial it back, it's like they don't have what I have, which is a new perspective. They don't have, I guess, kind of realizing that nobody else is you.
That's right. I mean, it's an incredible advantage not having history and in many ways, you want both, right? That's what really successful teams are those that have people who are curious and are constantly challenging the status quo. And then you've got a whole bunch of people who have that institutional and historical knowledge, because you never want to chuck the baby out with the bathwater, but you kind of want both. Yeah. And so if you walk into a situation, any situation, career-wise or anything else, where you are feeling somewhat disadvantaged because you don't have certain information or experience, just recognize it for being the advantage that it is. Mm-hmm. And you couple that advantage with other people's advantages. And guess what? That's what makes teams more effective than individual contribution.
Right. Yeah, because most of the time people are on some type of team, right? So we go in, we compare ourselves to everybody else sitting at the table like, oh my gosh, I'm inferior, I'm less than, let me doubt myself. When really, imagine a baseball team, you can't have 12 pitchers, right? You're all bringing something different. So capitalize on, your unique value of what makes you different and reframing it in your mind of, no, this is not going to hurt me. It's going to help me. It's actually going to help the team because we all offer something different. I'm bringing a different gift to the table. I think that's right. Super powerful. So,
and it's also recognizing, I talk a lot about innovation, right? Creativity and innovation, and that's how you unlock the superpower of a brand. And I often say to my colleagues in this building, creativity and innovation isn't the exclusive preserve of the executive leadership team. In fact, I rather suspect that creativity and innovation is ready and waiting deep in this organization to be unlocked. And so I believe that one of the marks of a great leader is identifying who in this organization, or which combination of individuals in this organization should we pull together in order to unleash our full and truest potential. It shouldn't be within, it shouldn't be our marketing team who are responsible for creativity. It shouldn't be the leadership team that are responsible for innovation. It should be a combination of all skills, all functions at all levels, because they each bring a very powerful skill set and perspective. And together, that's what makes us stronger.
Yeah, that's interesting that, so we're getting rid of the, it's okay to say, I don't know. We're getting rid of this. I have to know all the answers, but also I have to do this by myself. I realize that I'm part of this team and I'm bringing something new, but also looking for something in a team, right? Where you don't have to know all of the answers, but I do know where to look for them.
That's right.
That's right. And so we'll get into how you spent your morning. You've been up since the crack of dawn, right? Tell us, what did you do this morning?
Wow. So just so happens, Meg, that I was working in one of our studios. So I decided a few weeks ago that I should explain this before I get into what I'd be doing. When you join SoulCycle, we require pretty much everyone to work a studio shift. So that is, you go into a studio, you might work for 2 or 3 hours, you might do an afternoon or a morning, but you understand and appreciate what actually goes on. It's very easy, right? When we're all sitting here in our HQ, very nice offices, we're not actually dealing with the day-to-day operations of running what is essentially, a retail business, right? We've got all of these physical units. Yeah. And guess what? Things go wrong in those units. Air conditioning stops working, or leaks spring, and consumers walk in and out. They might be your consumer, it might be our riders, there might be just people that wander along the street. And so we encourage everyone to work at least one shift so that they can appreciate what it's like at the pointy end, if you like, of our business.
Yeah.
I did my studio shift, but I did my studio shift when I started, when all of 100% of our studios were closed and we were only operating outside. And so my experience of Soul from a studio perspective was quite different to what is normal. Right. When we're all open.
Yeah.
And so I decided recently I'd love to do a week in studio, and that's what I'm doing this week. And of course, what I've realized is, I'm only 2 days in. I should say I'm only 2 days in.
Right. It's only Tuesday. You got the rest of the week to go.
I will tell you, they work so insanely hard. It's untrue. But I left work. I was working at one studio yesterday, and I left at 10 to 9 in the evening. Quite late for me. I'm a bit of an oldie, and I like my sleep.
Yes.
So late for me. And then I arrived at 6 o'clock this morning, which actually I realized when I arrived, I was half an hour early. And so I stood outside waiting at the studio. But yeah, so it was a late night and it was an early start, but it's been brilliant. I mean, how can you possibly understand what our teammates in the studios deal with unless you walk in their shoes, even if it's for a few days? So that's what I'm doing this week. But you have me in the head office because after my shift, I came to work.
Then I went to my other work.
Yes.
So what did you learn, I guess, so far in your studio shift journey that, I guess, what perspective have you gained?
Oh, that's a really great question. What perspective? So I had not truly appreciated, and forget, this is only day 2, but I hadn't truly appreciated the variety and complexity of a studio operation. So I think it's easy for me to think, perhaps sitting in HQ, all you do is you open the doors of the studio and we make sure that the schedule runs on time. And then that's great, isn't it? That's all. It's like, what a dream job. But of course, from being the hospitality of SoulCycle, so our riders' experience of Soul, it starts from the minute they step into the studio. So if the studio is clean and tidy and neat and ordered and together, and whether there is somebody to welcome you and to help you with your shoes and your water and anything else that you might require before you clip in, helping you set up on your bike, 60 people simultaneously wanting shoes, water and help with something. They want to move their bike.
I got locked out of my locker.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, then we have 120 people to deal with because you've got 60 people walking out of a class and 60 other people walking into a class. And so it's a lot, right? It's really intense. So what I've learned, which in my nice little spreadsheet head, because that's the way my brain works, as like a spreadsheet is, it's not evenly balanced throughout the course of a day or a shift. You have these peaks and troughs, and you've got an awful lot of work to do, but your work, there's work in terms of consumer facing, rider facing. And once we've kind of sent them on their merry way, or we've closed the door on the studio itself, then we have everything else that needs to be done to make sure that the studio is fit and ready for the next group of riders. So they're quite busy. And I will say that they're dealing with challenging riders on occasion who, they've paid good money to have this phenomenal experience. And if it's not perfect, they're quite vocal about it. So I experienced that last night as well.
But yeah, there's a lot to do.
There is a lot to do. And of course, our instructors, certainly on what I've observed so far, they really kind of roll their sleeves up and get their hands dirty. And it's great to see the team. You really see the strength of team when you see the studio in full operation, like checking people in, grabbing them water, helping them set up their bikes, getting them the right weights, whatever it is. It's fun. It's fun. I mean, I don't want to do it full time. I will tell you that.
Yeah, that's a job. That is a job. There's just always so much to do. I mean, even taking the shoes out, spraying them down, Velcroing them, matching them together with the size, doing that hundreds of times per day. I'm like, that's got to be a lot. But, it's so funny because you even think of imposter syndrome from a rider perspective. I'd be curious to see what the perspective of a new rider is. Because SoulCycle can be very intimidating, and especially there's, boutique fitness in general, somewhere new, even getting to somewhere new, right? Not knowing where you're going. And then you see everybody else there, right? There's so many riders, I feel, that might have that feeling of, I don't belong here, and it's
I think you're right to that is a real risk, but we work so hard at SoulCycle.
To be inclusive, To
be inclusive. And our instructors, the way that our instructors talk from the podium, the way that we act from the moment you walk through the door, it's like, you do you. I remember one of our master instructors saying to me, we really believe in you do you. And I feel that, right? Recovering from ACL surgery, I'm now riding pretty much in the saddle. I don't feel uncomfortable. I don't feel uncomfortable that
we're unwelcome.
No, I never feel excluded. But of course, we don't always get it right. We're not perfect. But we work really, really hard to accommodate, facilitate, whoever you are, whatever your fitness level, whatever you look like, feel like, this is a place for you. You do you. And we will continue to invest very heavily in making sure that people feel that this is a place just for them. Yeah. And in fact, when you walk through the doors of every single one of our studios, there is a framed kind of manifesto, which is the Soul Sanctuary. And we put those up. We kind of created that, developed that, and put them up in every one of our studios very intentionally to signal, take the time. This is a place for you, whoever you are. And so I hope our riders understand that.
Yeah.
Both existing and new.
Right. And I agree. It's, I love the inclusivity aspect of it because, I mean, if everybody does truly struggle with self-doubt and imposter syndrome, then that makes us all relatable, right?
Of course. I mean, vulnerability is a very powerful thing. Mm-hmm. And, look, I speak to lots of other executives and, I attend conferences and I hear this topic of conversation all the time, which is showing vulnerability is not a weakness. Sometimes I think, old school back in the day, you had to be all powerful, know everything.
Yeah, have all the answers.
have all the answers. You don't. And actually there's real power to vulnerability because people connect with you and they connect with you on a human level. And that is where trust, respect and goodwill are manifest. And then that's when you're in it together. And that's when you're a team. And teams are really, really powerful. Really powerful. It's not ever down to one individual or one group of individuals at the top of the organization. It's the power of the collective that denotes success.
Right. And so, whether you're a CEO looking for, I guess, vulnerabilities of the business, right? I don't have all the answers. I don't know. I don't have to know all the answers, but I know where to look where I could get some answers. Like, let me utilize my resources, right?
That's right.
The same thing, the same methodology works in any type of imposter syndrome situation. Take a new writer walking in. I don't know how to clip my shoes in. I don't know. Hey, it's okay. We're going to take care of you. Here's some resources. Right. Someone's going to set you up on your bike, right? The instructor's going to tell you all about the bike and help you if you need to and all of that, where it's just, just trying something. So if you were to, and this is kind of a stretch, but be curious to know your thoughts. Relate to a new writer walking into SoulCycle. Take that type of mentality and give them advice, like the advice that you would give to that person, but now put it in a business setting, right?
I actually find that quite easy because it's, if you don't know, ask.
If you don't know, ask.
If you don't know, ask. And in any situation, I would say, if you don't know, ask. And what I always say frequently in business is, don't bullshit me. Like, if you don't have the answer, don't pretend that you do. Now, if you are a rider walking into our studio and you don't ask, and you kind of bluff your way through and think, I know what I'm doing, you won't have a comfortable ride and you will not experience the joy that is SoulCycle. So don't bluff your way through, ask. Because I will tell you this, right? So I'm guessing that I'm about 1,000 rides in, or not, like 900 to 1,000 rides. I feel like
you would have celebrated your 1,000th ride. That's a big milestone.
Then I'm approaching. I think I might be.
I was going to say, if they miss that, we are big. I know we are big on celebration at SoulCycle. So
I have not yet been celebrated for my 1,000th. So but I'm up there. Like, I've done quite a lot, and I've been riding for many years, like 7, 8 years, like that. We launched a new class recently. It's called Soul Method, right? And I obviously back in the saddle after. I thought I want to go, or I want to experience it. I will tell you, I was made to get off my bike, and somebody talked me through from the podium. The instructor talked me through settings. What did I learn? That I have been riding my bike entirely incorrectly for the last 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
I hadn't been riding with the seats high enough, right?
Yeah.
And so, I've enjoyed my almost 1,000 rides for the last 8 years. I've got fit. I've got strong. As a result, it's been wonderful. But just these small changes, because I chose to take a class where, it's a form and method. So we're kind of going through in more detail than you might otherwise. How to set up your bike, how to, set on your back, how to ride, where to have your bum in relation to
what resistance feels like.
Exactly. Like and how resistance is your friend.
Yes.
I will also say that the cushions for the bike are also your friend.
Yes. Use your resources, right? Going back to that.
But it is interesting, isn't it? Like, even me, after a few years and quite a lot of rides, I still had much to learn about the optimum way for me to set up the bike. And so when I say always ask, if you're a beginner, ask. If you're 6 months in, ask. If you're a year in, ask. If you're 8 years in, ask.
Right. Where there's more power in knowledge versus, I don't want to ask because they might not think I know what I'm doing, or they're going to think that I'm incompetent or whatever it might be. I don't want anyone to know that I don't know, Yeah. So
I think we are our own worst critics, aren't
yes.
we? And so there's a lot of that like inner voice playing a role there.
Oh, for sure. And when you think about it, it's what is actually worse? Asking somebody on your team, right? We're part of a team where somebody's here to help you, asking, voicing that, and then knowing, and then applying information to be adaptable, or just staying in not knowing because I don't want anyone to know I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what's worse? If you actually like take it out of your mind, sit it down and look at it side to side, it's like, oh, clearly I would ask for help,
That's right.
At least Google it.
I think it's interesting. I think when I've experienced this working in studios, right? There's a lot of people walking into the studios and there's people coming out, and we don't have one studio crew member for every single rider. So you may feel, oh, I don't want to bother people. I think a lot of people feel, oh, I don't want to bother. I don't want to ask. Or there's several people competing for that individual's time and attention. But, so look, if you're in a studio at SoulCycle, that is what we are there for. So please, please, please ask. And we will definitely get to you. And don't feel like you're a bother. You're never a bother.
Yeah. I think that same advice would apply to anything, right? There's things that are there for you and use them, And I love that you, not only did you do your studio shift, but you spent a couple of months, a good chunk of time going around to did you hit every studio or every market, I think?
I have not covered every single studio to my embarrassment, but I'd say I've done 80% of our studios.
Yeah. So you went around, and what was that experience like? Again, I don't know the answers, but I know where to look. And then when I get there, I'm not going to pretend I know what I'm doing. I'm going to ask, right? And we even sat down in the fall when you were in Houston and just having conversations of just, hey, let's just talk. Let's ask questions. Why do you think it's so hard for people to ask questions?
Well, I think it's, I find people find it much easier one-to-one or one-to-few to ask questions. So what do we do at SoulCycle and all the companies that I've ever worked at? Is I have a monthly all hands, right? So you invite everybody to join a call. You very much hope and try for it to be a dialogue. You're sharing information so everybody's aware of what's going on, why it's happening, what the results are. Then, of course, you invite questions. But we have hundreds and hundreds of people on these calls, right? And so do you want to be the one person? Do you want to be the one instructor asking that one question that impacts on you I just got back from Miami, right? So that impacts you in Miami or you in a particular studio in Miami, or do you stay quiet? So I think people feel uncomfortable asking questions for lots of reasons. They don't want to impose. They don't want to appear as if I don't know the answer. I ought to know. I've been here for a while. I should know the answer to this. I find when I visit markets, I get so much out of those market visits. I hope I get as much out as the teammates that I'm meeting, because you just have the opportunity to have a fluid, candid conversation about what's going on. Why do you feel the way that you feel? Oh, I didn't realize you felt that way. I didn't realize the decision that we made in New York was a terrible decision for you guys in London or you guys in Houston or whomever in San Francisco. So it gives you incredibly powerful perspective.
Yeah.
And look, Soul's all about human connection, aren't we? Like I always do this because I can never.
Yeah, there's no word for it. It's palpable energy, but that's all I could describe it as. It's literally just the soul in SoulCycle.
That's right.
It just can't be reproduced anywhere else.
That's right. And of course, therefore, that manifests itself in what we do professionally. So when I visit you in Houston or whomever it is that I'm visiting with, just the fact that we have time, you realize, oh, she's a human. She's just like me, right? She's just regular. She doesn't have all the answers. But she's really committed to and passionate about what soul is, what soul does, and what soul can be in the future. When you realize that, it unlocks something, and it unlocks something in me, and I very much hope it unlocks something in the colleagues that I'm meeting with when I spend time out in the market. It's very important. Yeah,
that is. And I loved our visit together. And I think you're right. I know you're right. And I love this word that you keep using. It's human. It's this human experience. We're in our human experience right now, right? But also realizing that you're a human is sometimes shocking. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not Superwoman. I'm not, I can't do it all. But you're also not meant to do it all. So realizing, not just realizing, but also embracing the fact that you're a human. I coach leaders, and I do not coach businesses. I'm not a business coach. I'm a human in business coach, where it's, we show up, we walk into the office or wherever we are, and it's like, whoop, I got to put this hat on and take this one off. Like my human hat comes off and I have to be this for this.
Yes. But
it's really, there's so much power in just embracing your humanness and seeing people for being humans. It gives you a lot more grace for self and grace for others, and
the word that hasn't appeared in this conversation, which I'm only just now reminded of, but I think I felt as if it was the word of du jour, but at some point is authenticity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So showing vulnerability, saying, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how long this will last. That's just being authentic, isn't it? It's just, this is the truth. And, maybe that's what this is all about. Just being your authentic self.
Yeah.
An authentic leader. That's really powerful. It's not something to be embarrassed about or to hide.
I think that there's so much power behind that too, in inspiring your team, showing up for your team by allowing yourself to be your authentic human self. You're also showing others, hey, it's okay for you to be your authentic human self. And when you spend time with yourself, right, have those pep talks in the mirror and really pause and sit with yourself, you can get this better sense of self, right? Now, if you're trying to present that you know all the answers or can expose weaknesses, and it's basically taking you out of yourself. So of course you feel like you don't belong here, because you don't. You're out here versus being back in your body, in your human form, and in yourself. So
that's right. It's quite isolating. I don't do this, right? So I don't know if it's isolating, but I rather think if you assert that you know everything and know all the answers, that might be quite a lonely place to be.
Yeah.
You're kind of, to your point, you're kind of out there on your own at that point, aren't you? So, no, I think it's healthier, and I'm certainly happier when I feel that, I'm very comfortable making the decisions that need to be made, and they're not always easy or nice decisions to be made, but I'm comfortable making them. But I will always share the rationale. This is the decision I've made. This is why I've made it. This is the context in which I've made it. And I'll also always give people the opportunity to say, well, I don't agree with that. Did you think about X? And sometimes those challenges have occurred, and as a consequence, we've changed the decision.
Mm-hmm.
So, listening and getting feedback from your team is really important.
Right. More perspective.
You can't manage a business through consensus. I will tell you that. Like, if I had to consult with 1,000 people every time I wanted to do something, that would not probably be very productive.
Yes.
But always explaining the why. That was one thing that I heard at Soul a lot when I first got here, actually, is oftentimes decisions are made and we don't understand the why. So we've worked really quite hard to explain the why. And it's another aspect of showing vulnerability or being authentic. Like, this is the logic, the rationale that went into making this decision. People might not always agree, but they understand. Okay, I understand it. Okay,
right.
I've got it.
Kind of going back to it seemed like the best thing at the time. That's kind of, I feel like, was my motto, my personal motto for those couple years of the pandemic. I was like, I don't know, that seemed like a good idea at the time. But, we'll wrap up with the final question. And, I think it's not a matter of if you make bad decisions, it's just, we're humans, right? So it's like accepting the fact that, hey, I will probably not make perfect decisions for the rest of my life. So we're accepting the fact that I will likely make a bad decision. How would you advise someone to come back from that wormhole of imposter syndrome and in self-doubt and anger and self-loathing from making a bad decision?
I believe quite firmly that we learn more in life from the mistakes that we make than often what we learn from the successes. Mm-hmm. You learn more about yourself. You learn more about what works. You learn much more about the impact that you can have on others. And so when I make mistakes, which I do because I'm human, whether that's professional or personal, I let myself lick my wounds for a short period of time. And then I know that I will never repeat that same mistake, because the pain, the discomfort, the impact that decision has made, you will never want to repeat. And so I guess it goes back to where we started. I look in the mirror and I give myself a talking to. I say, you can wallow for a nanosecond, and now you have to learn from it. Now, if I keep on repeating the same mistake over and over again, then I think there's a different issue.
Yeah.
But I think I learn, me personally, I can only talk for myself, but I have learned more in my life from the mistakes that I've made rather than the successes that I've enjoyed.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely some mistakes where you're like, oh, I only have to learn that one once. You know? And then you have a team of people and mentors and everybody else, the trusted advisors who help you with the ones that, hey, you remember you already made that once, but
that's right. That's right.
But yeah, I love, and you had said earlier, I'm an eternal optimist, where that's your wing 7 of your Enneagram 8. We'll go all into it, but I'm a 7. So knowing, like, thinking like this mistake and the knowledge that I've learned and now applying, that's the key word, right? Learning from it is allowing for growth. It's allowing me to, I'm so glad I made a mistake on this little piece. Can you imagine if I hadn't made this mistake on this little thing and hadn't learned the lesson until a much bigger thing, right? So kind of finding gratitude for mistakes, which I think sounds very counterintuitive, but you know,
it does.
the lesson.
I think definitely find the lesson and taking time. Don't glide over. Don't, you know, oftentimes it's quite, let's pretend that didn't happen and move on. I try not pretend it didn't happen. And of course, like, at my age and point in my career, I'm sure I've made lots of mistakes. And one of the tools that I've learned to try and thwart those mistakes before they happen is I do something called a pre-mortem. It's not a very nice term, and I'm sure I should come up with a much nicer one. But a pre-mortem in business, or not in business, in my personal life, I try and think multiple steps or multiple months or multiple years ahead. And okay, let's assume this has been a terrible decision and a terrible thing that we do. What were the things about this that could have gone wrong? And I call it a pre-mortem because if you anticipate what could go wrong in whatever it is your endeavor is, then it helps somewhat to avoid those things happening.
Plan for the hurdles. For sure.
Plan for the hurdles. So my team hear me say that. Let's do a pre-mortem on that. Because I'm always trying to anticipate before we launch into something that has impact. Like SoulCycle is a very large company. We employ a lot of people. The things that we do impact both our teammates, our colleagues across the organization, impacts our community, our wider community, our riders. I'm very thoughtful in the decisions that we make and how they are going to impact both our riders and our teammates.
The ripple effect of everybody involved. And that can be a lot of people sometimes. So plan for the hurdles. I love that. The pre-mortem, right?
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Yes, that's right. Well, because normally we do a post-mortem when somebody's dead, which is why it's an awful phrase. And I really ought to come up with a nicer one. But yeah, pre-mortem, not post-mortem.
Yeah. And then learning from the lessons is huge. Instead of pretending like it didn't happen, it's not going to allow you to grow from it. So let's not pretend it didn't happen. So, well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. This was awesome.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I did too. I'm going to obviously link SoulCycle. Where else can people, I mean, I'm not asking people to follow you to your studio shifts, or sit next to you in class, but where can people find you? LinkedIn, I know you're on there.
Find me on LinkedIn. Nobody can find me on Instagram or TikTok. I'm not there.
You're not doing the dancing trends on TikTok?
I know that's probably a shock and a surprise to you, but no, I'm not. But you can always find me in a SoulCycle studio. And sometimes I have riders who reach out and say, oh, I saw you in class, but I didn't want to, overstep. And I say, you can't overstep. Like this is the wonderful thing about SoulCycle, right? It's a great leveler. We're all Therefore, exactly the same reason.
Right.
And so, if you ever see me in the studio, please pop by and say hi.
You'll be in the saddle for a little while because of the ACL. I did.
Yeah.
What happened there? I have to ask.
Okay. So we've just talked about authenticity and vulnerability.
Yeah, right.
So I'm very mindful of that. I will say this: dancing and very, very high heels were involved in that situation.
You know what? The clip-in shoes are just the safest. Clip into a bike, the bike doesn't move. You can't, there's just
no danger.
Yeah, there's no danger. So
yeah, I should heed my own advice. Okay, yes,
right. Well, you'll be back. You'll be back doing some body rolls and tap backs. Sooner than you know. So
well, I will tell you, SoulCycle is great rehabilitation. My surgeon told me so. So yes.
Well, you know what? I didn't know this until today, but we are alike in that. I was also a marathon runner. I injured my knee, and my physical therapist told me, this is in 2012, told me to get on a bike. And as a runner, you're like, ew, cyclist. Oh, the worst. And so I did it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so much better than running. And I never turned back.
It's bonkers. It's bonkers. And of course, you would expect me to give a plug for SoulCycle because I love SoulCycle. It's my joy, right? But I tried stationary bikes of other sorts. And what I realized is, it's not spinning that's my cup of tea. It's SoulCycle that's my cup of tea. So it's a very, very unique experience. And I often say the magic of SoulCycle is you will not work quite so hard in any other workout. Mm-hmm. The magic of Soul is you feel as if you've just been dancing.
Yes, without the high heels.
Yeah, that without the high heels, which means it's a very safe pursuit.
Very safe, very safe. Yes. I've never seen anybody, clip heels into the bike. So, yeah, and I agree with you. It's just this crazy sense of self that you just can't get anywhere else, and this like-minded collective energy. It's simply magical. So, that's what drew me to it. So.
Amazing. Me too.
Well, thank you so much. We'll definitely link your LinkedIn. People can find you on there, or say hi to Evelyn in the class if you see her. And if you see her dancing in high heels, just tell her doctor. Call her. We're gonna tattletale on you. But do you remember your lines for the?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
You wrote them down.
I do. Yeah, right. I wrote them down.
Awesome. Well, if we could leave you with just one thing, it would be this. Expect good things always.
Always.
I like the drama there.
And they will always happen.
And they will always happen. Yes, this is perfect. You nailed it. You could be a SoulCycle instructor, Well, thank you so much. I hope to be in New York soon. Enjoy your studio shifts for the rest of the week. Thank you all for tuning in. This was wonderful, and we'll see you next time.
See you soon. Thank you.
It's time for you to create your fate.